Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. And our top story today, shattering retirement myths. The good old days? Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Adam Shapiro. He's anchor for Yahoo Finance. Adam, it is absolutely great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Happy to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and a big fan of what y'all are doing at Yahoo Finance and follow the programming regularly. And I know you recently connected with Ted Bennett, who is, I guess, the godfather, the father of the 401k plan to really talk about retirement and kind of where things stand today. Why don't you give us your thesis and we can kind of talk through some of the highlights of the article?
Yeah, well, let's first clarify who Ted Bennett is. He was an accountant, a CPA, and back in 1978, he noticed the changes in the tax code in the, let's line 401k of the tax code then, and he realized that companies could use this as a way to help their employees save for retirement. So what you and I now know as the 401k program gets its beginning with an observation from this guy, Ted Bennett, who's still alive, by the way. He talks about it. And I guess the big headline when you speak to Ted is that the 401k was never intended to be your sole source of retirement income. For many of us, it is, other than Social Security. And we can talk separately about Social Security because there are a lot of myths about Social Security. I'm here to tell you today, no matter the headlines you see from my colleagues in the media, Social Security will be there in the future. Not at 100 cents on the dollar, but it will be there. It's not like it's going to go broke and nobody's going to get anything if they do nothing in Congress. But with the 401k, what Ted was pointing out is that it was in addition to the kinds of investment vehicles and savings people had for retirement. And there's a whole lot to unpack with him, such as we live longer. Many companies got rid of pensions. There is a myth about what retirement was like prior to the 401k's existence. And there's a lot of clutter that people have to cut through to get to the realities of where we stand right now and where we used to be.
Yeah, and that really good summary. And here we are 42 years later, $8 trillion of the almost 20 plus trillion in retirement assets are in 401k plans. But many Americans do not have access to a retirement savings plan like a 401k, right? And that there's like almost 50% of working Americans, because they work for a company or an organization that is maybe too small to sponsor a retirement plan. But there are really opportunities and options out there for these folks.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that figure, because that was a figure that was pretty static going into the pandemic. It's gone up since then. Companies have offered 401ks over the last year to more employees and more people. There was that first metric, which is only 50% of all of us who are in the working population had access to a 401k. And then within that metric, it used to be something like only 50% actually contributed to the 401k. So the first metric is 50% of roughly 160 million of us had access to a 401k. The second metric, only 50% were funding it. That has gone up dramatically during 2020. More people are funding 401ks, partially because of the pandemic, partially because where are we going to spend your money in the last 15, 16 months. So that's one issue that's going on. The other issue is Social Security. You know, we just talked about, I talked about the myth. You'll hear it. They're voting in Congress at some point on Secure Act 2, which changes 401ks, automatically enrolls people. There are low cost programs for small business owners where they can set up IRAs for employees. So there are retirement vehicles that exist now that employers can set up for their employees. But Secure Act 2, which has bipartisan support, by the way, in the House, would make that a lot easier for people. You would essentially have to say, no, I don't want to save for retirement and get out. You would be automatically enrolled. And for employers, there would be vehicles to do it with minimal cost, as opposed to what happens right now when you have to set up the 401k. So all of that is going on. But the key, too, is that Social Security, at its worst, let's assume they do nothing in Congress with Social Security, you're still going to get 70 to 75 cents on the dollar. Now, I'm not saying that's good when you're plotting your retirement planning based on getting 100 cents on the dollar. But that's if Congress does nothing. Going forward, it'll pay something like 75 cents on the dollar.
Yeah. And Adam, going back to what we talked about with Ted Benna, and this was a supplemental plan, this puts a lot of pressure on us as individuals to put money away. So if we could potentially, I'm 49, I'll be 50 next year. It's hard to believe. At some point I want to draw from my Social Security, but if I may get 70%, we're not saying that's going to happen. That puts a lot of pressure on me to save more. And by the way, I'm going to, knock on wood, I'm going to live longer. Right. And that means that the money's going to have to last for a longer period of time. So really a lot of onus on the individual here, all of us, to really put money away and have money for the future.
Well, one of the things that Ted and I talked about when I did that interview with him several months ago was the fact that I think a lot of us get afraid because we're told you have to have, and then they throw out a figure in the millions by the time you retire. I mean, you tell that to a 20 or 30-year-old and they're, the jaw drops, right? Instead of saying you have to have $2 million on the day you retire, if you explain to people you need to have assets that kick off, say, $6,000 to $10,000 a month for you to live on, they can wrap their heads around that. And if the average Social Security payment when you retire is, let's say, $2,000, and you need to come up with, say, $7,000 a month at retirement, well, that makes it much easier to comprehend. Okay, I need $7,000 a month. I'm going to be getting $2,000 from Social Security, so I need to create an investment strategy that will kick off $5,000 a month in retirement. A 401k, if you start in your 20s or 30s, a 401k could very easily fulfill a great portion of that. Forget that huge number. It could fulfill that. Then there's also IRAs, IRAs that you can contribute to as well, in addition to your 401k. One analyst we had come on our program talked about, look at it as a three-legged stool: Social Security, 401k, IRA. The other thing, when you hear that number and they say you have to have so many millions of dollars when you retire, remember too that when they talk about the percentage of your income in retirement versus what you're earning now, for most people, you will have paid off the mortgage by the time you retire. So that mortgage payment of $1,500 a month, whatever it might be, will no longer be a part of your monthly necessity. So you're still going to have to pay the property taxes, but the mortgage payment will be subtracted from that, depending on how you have moved through all of this over the 30 to 40 years of your work life.
Yeah. Adam, I want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Adam more about some of the myths in retirement. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score, a credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Adam Shapiro of Yahoo Finance. Adam, thanks for staying with us this morning.
Sure.
Let's talk about retirement income, and I think you really alluded to this. It's like, everyone's kind of shooting for that number. I need $1 million, I need $2 million, I need 500,000, whatever that is, and trying to take that and change that to what do you need in retirement. You talked about the mortgage. You talked about maybe what taxes could be like in retirement. Really, the focus of the industry now is on translating your balance to what it may be on a monthly income basis. And that really helps you set out as an individual what you need to set aside. You kind of can work backwards, right?
You can work backwards. You can also protect within your 401k plan. Some plans offer target date funds. And essentially, the way I would describe that is these are actively managed funds within your 401k plan, which are constantly juggling the assets to gauge for inflation with a target date of return. So if you have that within your plan, that's one way to protect the assets you have. The younger you are, the advice you usually get is the riskier you should be. But for people who you pointed out, you're going to turn 50 soon. As you get closer to 60, you're going to want to sit down with a financial planner to talk about, I've got this amount of money in the 401k. How much of that do I need to now start moving into maybe fixed income? And traditionally, when we've said fixed income, we've been talking about bonds. But forget the Ken Fisher ad. He says, I'd rather go to you-know-where than sell an annuity. Let's be honest about what an annuity can do for you. And annuities are an hour-long discussion. But for instance, if you had a pension and you left an employer and that pension, you weren't sure about what would happen with that pension, you could take that money and purchase an annuity. You'd have to run the numbers to see what the annuity would pay you. It might not be the same as the pension. But annuities should not be dismissed. Annuities are a foundation. Again, think of that three-legged stool we talked about in retirement. An annuity, especially a fixed income annuity, can provide you a guarantee no matter what. You're going to get this amount of money every month. It shouldn't be your entire retirement. You should not take every penny you have and put it into an annuity. But you should look at a portion of protecting your 30 plus years of working in a 401k and shifting a portion of that perhaps into an annuity. And in fact, within the last 2 years, what you've started to see 401k plans do is provide for that shift into an annuity as you get closer. I call it the off-ramp. As you get closer to the off-ramp. Again, an annuity should not be everything, and you never put everything into one thing. But an annuity that guarantees you a portion of that, remember we said the $7,000 figure? You got $2,000 from Social Security. If you can do an annuity that's going to kick off $2,000 a month for you, you've now got 4 of the 7. All you need from the 401k investments that remain is $3,000 a month. That's not crazy. That's not, astronomical. That's achievable.
Yeah, certainly doable. And I think agree. Never put all your eggs in one basket. Adam, let's talk about education. I think one of the great things about your network and your programming is it's really driven towards educating people, whether it's about finance, whether it's about the market, whether it's about things like this, how to put money away. How important is to you and to the network is this educational component? Because it feels like to me, we've got to educate employers about what their options are. We talked about that in the first segment, IRA, 401k, multiple employer plan, whatever. But also as an individual, we've got to be up to date on what's available to us and also be financially literate as an adult, a young person, in order to avoid some of the trappings that exist.
I'm still 15 years from the off-ramp, okay? The hardest question I ask, whether they are guests on my show or in my personal planning for us, for our retirement, is how much. I had that discussion regarding an annuity with someone about 2-3 years ago, and I kept saying, how much, how much? I could not get a simple answer from a money manager about what does this cost? What are the interests? How much? What does this cost me is the most important question you can ask. I have a cousin who handles about 1/3 of our retirement planning. I had to ask my cousin, how much do you get paid? And how do you get paid? That's the hardest question. And I'm a reporter. I'm paid to ask questions. If I find it difficult to ask somebody how much, imagine what that's like for most people. But it's the key question. What is this going to cost me? And demand, when you're doing any discussion with a financial planner, total transparency. There's nothing wrong with a financial planner getting paid for the service they're providing you. You have a right to understand how they get paid. And if you don't understand, walk out. It should be simple. It's not, by the way. Go into your 401k and try and figure out the fees. My eyes glaze over when I try to figure out what are fees in some of the mutual funds that you might be investing in. Warren Buffett, by the way, always says just go for a low fee, index fund like the Vanguard Index 500 or the Fidelity Spartan 500. It's complicated because the industry makes it complicated. It doesn't have to be. Anybody who doesn't explain it to you, don't give them your business. Go somewhere else. There's a ton of people out there who will explain it to you.
Yeah, I always hate jargon, and I think the industry has a tremendous amount of jargon around it. I think that confuses people and unnecessarily. In terms of, and we're going to see, I think they're actually exploring in the Congress and some of the regulations around a new fiduciary rule that kind of was parked and put aside. It's kind of been.
They had it and they repealed it.
Yeah, they had it, they repealed it, they defeated it, and it put aside. Now it seems to be coming back up. And I think personally, it couldn't be at a better time. That we should be. You mentioned picking an advisor. To your point, we need to understand what advisors are paid and where their priorities lie. Because if you are a fiduciary, you have a responsibility to your investor, your client, to do the right thing.
My cousin, prior to the first time the fiduciary rule was put in, was not beholden to me. My cousin was acting as most money managers for their company. I don't want to say which company it is. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. When the fiduciary rule was put in place, she had to act on behalf of us, but then that was repealed. I mean, some companies will tell you that, and they adopt the fiduciary rule voluntarily, that they are acting in your best interests. It's just very simple. How much? How does this work? It's the toughest two questions to ask, but it's the one you got to keep asking. And another thing, by the way, don't worry about comparing. We do it all the time. And on my website, we publish these things about where am I compared to the other people in my age group on a 401k. Let me tell you something. Jeff Bezos and I have an average income or an average net worth of. Now think about that. Jeff Bezos and I have an average net worth of how many billions of dollars? Of course I don't have an average net worth near billions. That's why comparing yourself to other people is futile. You know what your expenses are. You know what you need today. You have an idea right now as we're talking, everybody watching has an idea of what they probably are going to need in 20 years. Yes, there's going to be inflation, but hopefully it won't be, like Weimar Germany and crazy out of control. So you have a sense of what you're aiming for. With the simple numbers in mind, you can start building up what you need to do. There was never, by the way, in this country, the golden era of retirement. That is just a myth. It didn't exist in the 30s. It didn't exist in the 40s. The pensions that people talk about that were so many people had pensions. That was a brief, roughly 4-decade period in this country. Pensions were never, the entire population never had pensions. At its best, it was close to 30% of the population. Today, traditional pensions as we knew them in that 4-decade period, roughly 9% of the population. I'm not talking about government employees. So don't worry about it was so much better in the olden days. It wasn't. In fact, people used to have deferred retirement plans, which if they left the company, they lost all of the stock. That really, you forgive my language, that sucks. And that's just how it was. So It's been a slow slog to get where we are today with a long way still to go.
Yep. And I'm remembering the Studebaker plan, which led to ERISA. But you're right.
You see the poster.
What's that?
You see the poster, my Studebaker poster.
There,
right
there you
over
go.
here.
There you go. And that led to ERISA, but we have made progress. We're making more progress, and it's folks like Adam Shapiro and the team at Yahoo Finance, as well as here at BRN, who are really carrying the load and helping move things forward. Adam, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program, and we look forward to having you back again sometime very soon.
Sure, I'd love to do it.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow, so until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same old stuff.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.